Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast, brought to you by Marketing What's New. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today we're diving into SaaS. First, I want to remind you about the last couple of episodes, just coming off of a series that specialized on product marketing books. You'll want to check that out if you work in a B2B product role. And this episode is in keeping with that same theme. Let's get to today's show. I've got a scenario I want to run by you. I want you to have something I'm not finished making. I'm not going to let you buy it, but I will let you pay to use it. And you're going to continue to pay me over time to use this thing that I continue to finish making. And while you use it, I will get to see what you're doing with my product. And I'll use that information to figure out how I can sell you new things. That doesn't sound like a very good deal for you as a buyer, does it? But this is exactly how software as a service or SaaS works. And most of the software in B2B, and the world for that matter, is now bought and sold this way. Marketers don't skip a beat explaining this aspect of a technology product. But surprisingly, there are some things about SaaS products that do trip them up. And today we're going to talk with someone who's seen almost everything that can go wrong in marketing SaaS. Our guest has worked in and written about the SaaS space for his whole career. He began as a technology journalist for Canadian publications like the Globe and Mail, the National Post, and Bloomberg News. Moving on from there, he co-founded what ended up being a wildly unsuccessful startup. Some of the mistakes you'll hear are ones that he himself has made. And he now helps B2B SaaS companies accelerate growth, underpinned by good positioning, messaging, brand storytelling, and a solid go-to-market plan. Through his consultancy, Marketing Spark, he works with companies as a fractional CMO, a strategic advisor, a brand strategist, and someone who will give them a shoulder to cry on. We spoke to him in his hometown of Toronto, where in off hours you can find him playing hockey and tennis. Let's go talk to Mark Evans. I'm really glad to welcome Mark Evans. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We're going to talk about SaaS businesses. We're going to talk about SaaS marketing because this is an area that you know rather well. And I guess I'll begin by posing a question, and that is if you could maybe just level set for any of us who have been asleep for the last little while, in your own definition, what makes a company a SaaS offering? Like, what would you say are the must-have criteria for them to qualify as a SaaS business?
Well, in the old world, a software business was an application that you downloaded on your computer or server. It was on your own premises, and you were often responsible for maintaining it, upgrading it. And SaaS is accessed via the web. So you're connecting with a server, could be anywhere in the world, but that's how you access and use the service, and they're responsible for maintenance and upgrades, and you don't have to worry about that. That's the beauty of the model, is that someone else does all the grunt work, and you just leverage the service when and if you need it.
For sure, and it's way better from a buyer's standpoint. Now let's swivel around to the seller's standpoint. What would you say are the most market differences for, let's say, a company that is selling a SaaS-based software versus, compare them to another company that is still selling shrink wrap software?
Well, it's easier to distribute. You don't have to worry about shipping. You don't have to worry about all those sort of administrative tasks that go along with having a physical product. The beauty of SaaS is that it's a one-to-many model. You can have it in one place, and then you serve it up to people around the world. And the other thing is that you really just can easily maintain, upgrade, improve your product on the fly. So you can make software changes like every day if you want to, as opposed to having to send out a new version of the software, which people have to download and then install into their computer. So it's a much more elegant, convenient model. SaaS has, I think, broadened the market for a lot of companies because the geographies don't exist anymore. You can serve customers anywhere. And I think that it's a much more efficient way to run a business because everything's in one place and people can access it when and where they want.
Yes. And it's efficient from a standpoint of customer acquisition too, because instead of you having, as we did, because you and I are both of the age where we both remember the days of on-premises software. So instead of you having to do a sale of a product, and then if you have a large release of a new product, then you've got to go back to the base, see how many of them you can get to adopt the new one, have another transaction, as you say, poof, it's just there, and they're accessing it.
Yeah.
Now, from the seller standpoint, they are there, but they're not going to stay on your platform automatically without you doing anything. I'm hearing in there that the SaaS company has taken on the responsibility of regularly updating their product, to earn the subscription which they're charging.
That's the beauty of the model. When you think about traditionally a product like Microsoft Office, every month it seems that you're getting a giant software download that Microsoft is asking you to do. And then you got to install the thing and it takes up capacity in your hard drive. And it becomes more of a pain than anything else. The SaaS model doesn't work that way. The other thing I wanted to say about the SaaS model is the barriers to entry for new entrants has dramatically shrunk. So you don't have to build up that whole entire shipping and customer service infrastructure. You could develop a product and launch it in a week, just put it on a AWS server run by Amazon, flip the switch on, and then put up a website and say we're open for business. Boom, you got a software business. So what we've seen, and I think obviously Salesforce was the leader in promoting SaaS with software is dead. Their whole motto they ran for years is What we've seen is sort of almost democratization of the software industry where anyone can get into it. Now, the flip side is that the software business has become extremely competitive. There are literally hundreds of companies in each and every market segment battling for business. And so you've got some obviously market leaders, but there are companies just battling for the spotlight, some of them just scrambling to get a few customers. So it has made every sector ultra competitive, which is great for consumers because they get better and better products, but tough for companies to compete these days. And that's one of the biggest challenges from a marketing perspective that I see is that it's really hard to attract the spotlight.
Right. And this is where we're going to spend the remainder of our time. This is a marketing show, so we're going to talk about the marketing implications of this interesting, rather economically unique type of sale and model that we've got. So if you could boil it down, Mark, what would you start with as some of the challenges or differences that a person who is marketing a SaaS tool, SaaS solution has compared to marketing anything generic?
I think that the fundamental common denominator for any marketer, regardless of product, is knowing your customers inside out. On LinkedIn, for example, I see marketers talking about the importance of knowing their customers and building buyer personas and ideal customer profiles. And there's a lot of talk when it comes to customers, but not a lot of walk. And by that, I mean that most marketers are making assumptions or educated guesses about who their customers are. And so they're doing marketing that they think resonates with their target audiences, but they don't know. And the fact of the matter is they don't talk to them. They don't meet with them. They don't get on the phone. They don't do surveys. They don't do case studies. They don't ask for testimonials. They just do marketing. And what happens is that your marketing is good, but it can't be great because you're not in your customer's shoes and you're not empathetic to what their needs are and how they actually do their jobs. And that's the biggest weakness for many marketers across the board.
Yeah, no doubt. And it is hard to do. It requires a commitment of time. It requires reaching out. But wouldn't you say that a SaaS business is robbed of the excuse of saying, I'm not connected to my customer? Because let's say, purveyor of regular software could say, well, it's 2 levels down a distribution chain. The retailer doesn't let me know who the end user is, or my reseller, or I only hear from them when there's a support emergency. Last time I checked, a SaaS business, you can actually go into your analytics or talk to the product team, and they'll give you analytics about how the software is being used. So that's at least a launch pad. That's a starting point for us to say, I can know my customer.
You're absolutely right. The problem is that I think a lot of marketers don't leverage all that insight and intelligence. So for example, when somebody signs up for a SaaS product, they have to provide their email address. It's just part of how the service is delivered. That's a great opportunity from the get-go. Once you've attracted a prospect and you've made them a customer, it's a great opportunity to learn about what their goals are, their expectations, why they purchased the software, what they were doing before, why they decided to change. And it's an opportunity that a lot of marketers miss on. They just don't ask those questions. They just don't engage their audiences. Then you have the problem of taking your customers for granted. So instead of building up a relationship and delivering value-added content and engaging and educating your customers to make them feel wanted and get them loving the product even more, that doesn't happen either. And then the other problem is they don't dig into the data and really find out how customers individually or customers as a group are actually using the product. So there may be parts of the product that are extremely valuable and useful, but no one's using it because they don't know about it. So you've got to do marketing, content, videos, outreach that really starts to build community and starts to make the customer feel like, hey, we're in it for you. Like we're a partnership here. It's not a transaction. And what we want to do is we want to create kind of a win-win scenario. The happier you are, the better use you get out of the product, the happier we're going to be and the more money we'll make. So it's really the biggest job a marketer has these days is really attracting prospects, engaging them, and then educating customers. And if you do those 3 things really well, then your business will be better off. You'll be more effective, and you'll keep customers longer, which is the biggest issue in SaaS these days.
Sure. So we obviously know that we can get close to the product and the users of the product and understand them. What would you say to the marketer out there that says, but I was told that I'm supposed to be here for growth, and so I'm not going to pay attention to that stuff. I'm just going to go and fill the top of the funnel with the volume, as high a volume of leads as possible, because I think that's what I'm here to do.
Well, the common refrain in the marketing business is that it's easier to keep a customer than attract a new one. And that's absolutely true. And it goes back to what I said off the top in terms of ultra competition. There are so many companies battling for those prospects, but it's a lot easier to keep the customers you have, stop them from churning out because they're unhappy or they feel ignored. And the other thing is upselling them. Like one of the biggest challenges right now for a lot of B2B SaaS companies is that demand is soft. And it's really harder and more challenging to get a new customer, but they've all got these customer bases that they've built up over the last 2 or 3 years as everyone's embraced digital transformation. So what you need to do now is, yes, you want to grow. Yes, you want to attract new customers, but you also want to make sure the customers you have don't leave. And I think a lot of marketers need to reallocate some of their time and their resources to make sure that the customers in the fold are happy, they use the product more, they buy more services, more seats, more access. And those 2 levers, new and existing, will drive revenue growth. And that is the formula for success. Marketers have forgotten those lessons because getting new customers the last couple of years has been easy. It's been like shooting fish in a pond. Right? Yeah, for sure. So I think that's the sort of the change in mindset right now.
Yeah, excellent point. So, just to underline what you've said, it seems like there are virtues that just spill out from knowing what the real customer needs. I mean, you've taken it in a whole 360 life cycle view. But yes, you absolutely owe it to yourself to take the time and find out how needs are being met, how they could be better met. Hell, you may go back to your product team and say, we've uncovered this thing, and if we had this small change, then we would be able to keep customers longer. There's many directions you can take this.
Right.
But I want to come back to the other thing that you'd been talking about, where you don't want to necessarily spend all that effort, which is low yield, on trying to fill the funnel with new inquiries. I think there are many that fall prey to, we just need to hit a certain number of demos. We just need to get a certain number of unqualified leads, or maybe even marketing qualified leads. But, you seem to really steer away from that, run the numbers on the scoreboard kind of thinking, don't you?
There's a lot of vanity metrics that goes on right now, because the problem is that many marketers are assessed based on these easy numbers like MQLs, demo requests, contact requests, page views. Those are, and then if you're a CEO and you're not a sophisticated marketer, you look at those numbers and go, that's what matters to me. A marketer should be worried about, our sales cycle shrinking. Are we getting people from MQLs to SQLs faster? And ultimately, a lot of marketers are going to be assessed on revenue growth, and we're going to be revenue-based marketers. So that's good marketing, and good business is underpinned by results. Because I could talk until the cows come home about all these great vanity metrics that I'm performing, but ultimately, if you say to me, CEO says to me, what impact have you had on revenue? I go, I don't know. Then you got a problem, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you have a ringside seat to this. You consult and offer fractional CMO services to SaaS type businesses. Without naming names, would you care to maybe give us some examples of some of the transgressions you've seen where people have, just gotten off course with that sort of thing?
Well, I can give you some examples from my own clients. Last year, I had a fractional CMO engagement. We did a lot of grunt work when it comes to establishing positioning and messaging, and we redid the website, and we revamped all their sales and marketing collateral, and it was awesome. I was really proud of myself. Problem is, we didn't get enough leads, right? I mean, ultimately, At the end of the day, it was on me as the fractional CMO, but I was spending a lot of time trying to do things that looked good and enhanced the brand, but ultimately didn't impact the business. And to me, that was a big lesson, because you can do a lot of things on the fringes. You can make things look pretty. You can make your website optimized, but if you don't perform, then your CEO, or in my case, the client, is going to turn around and say, you're not doing the job for me. So I think marketers need to be obsessed with revenue and recognize that at the end of the day, they're not going to last a long time if the business doesn't do well. I mean, the average tenure for a CMO these days is 40 months, and it's shrinking. And that's pretty scary, because CEOs want instant gratification. They're impatient for results, sales, and all the things, the kind of brand building things, which are important, that a marketer does. They don't count unless it impacts the bottom line. So I think marketers are under a lot of pressure these days to perform financially, as opposed to simply the KPIs that we all track in dashboards.
Yeah. Or the, boy, doesn't that look snazzy?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I live on the brand side of the house. I live around, brand storytelling and positioning and messaging. I love that stuff, but I also recognize, and I've learned the hard way, that there's also the hardcore business stuff that matters. And if you don't perform, then you're only doing half the job. And, that's sort of and that is even more prevalent today than even 6 months ago, where you could get away with, fluffy marketing because the underlying business was doing well. But now a lot of marketing really has to be linked to, there has to be direct correlation between, we're doing this, we're spending this money, and this is what's happening, and it's helping the business move forward.
Yeah, that's right. Where we sit here in 2022, we're in an economic climate where we know we need to show those real results. And we can't get away with just saying things are going to continue as they have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, the marketing landscape changes all the time. And I, as I said, when we were talking before we hit the record button, a lot of marketers have gotten fat and happy and lazy over the last couple of years. Digital transformation made demand surge. So you could do average marketing and it worked really well. What we're discovering now is that doesn't work as well. And some of the marketing you did isn't resonating. And so the rules of engagement have changed, and now we got to think differently. We have to think more creativity. We may have to drive more towards personalization. Generic marketing is a non-starter these days.
Yeah, well said. And we're going to dive into some of those ways that we can use the new tools and take some of the fundamentals that we all know and do the work. But first, we're going to take a quick break. I'm taking a moment to talk about the soon-to-be retired Google Universal Analytics, or UA, which affects almost every marketer with a website. Anyone who's seen it can tell that the new Google Analytics product is missing a lot of UA reports. You may think you're stuck using the GA4 interface to make them, but there's another way Google is giving you your data. They provide access to it as raw data in Google Cloud, and once in there, it can feed reports and even be merged with your other marketing data in a dashboard. You'll be able to show your company the impact that marketing has on revenue and profit. You know your data best. That's why you're the best person to set this up. But you don't have to do it alone. I've reduced the process down to something marketers can do inside of a 2-day workshop. Whether you've installed Google Analytics 4 or not, this will fully migrate all of your old UA settings and get you implemented on Google's stack of database and dashboard tools. In early 2023, the in-person GA Fast Forward workshops will happen in Ottawa, Kingston, Montreal, as well as across upstate New York and Vermont. You can go now and see registration details or get notified when it's happening in your area. Just go to gafastforward.com, spelled as you'd say it, or GAFast, the number 4, then WARD. Let's get back to the conversation. Okay, Mark, so you've got us convinced to be able to do SaaS marketing. We're certainly stepping it up. We are finding what is needed. We've even said that there are some KPIs, right? We definitely have to have revenue-related KPIs, pipeline-related. We have to know what kind of targets we're going to hit. I gather some of this is because of the fact that the whole model of SaaS is built on understanding what the lifetime value of a customer is, right? We know that, for example, we're going to spend way more to acquire a customer than we're going to make in the first month from them. We have to have some kind of a sense of how long they're going to be or how many of them are going to stay versus churn, right? So this is next level marketing in terms of how you're going to spreadsheet it and show that CEO that you know how to do this.
The reality of data is that everything can be measured and a lot of things are measured, and your performance is assessed in very micro ways. So there's lots of different ways that you can slice and dice marketing from a financial perspective. And that puts a lot of pressures on marketers because every campaign, every piece of content, every plan can be quantified to the nth degree. And so things like cost of acquisition are super important because it basically drives the ROI. Like, how much bang are we getting for the buck? And a lot of marketers, when you start spending more and more and more to get a customer, then you're in trouble. And we're all looking to optimize. We're all looking to become more cost efficient. And so a lot of marketing is very financial driven, which is why I said earlier that the marketers need to be revenue engines, need to be revenue leaders, because that's the key metric that's going to keep them in their jobs. That's going to get them promotions, higher salaries, keep their bosses happy, that kind of thing. So, and I think that focus has intensified as every marketing dollar counts right now, because a lot of SaaS companies are looking at their marketing expenditures and going, what do we need to spend? What can go? And what we're going to spend better deliver because we're trying to be as efficient as possible.
And those numbers are there. I mean, for the minority listening to this who are saying, okay, I'm just going to ignore this, I'm sticking my head in the sand. The reality is the data with which they're going to measure you is there whether you look at it or not. So, you need to, you're probably better to lean in and see what those numbers look like. Like you said, if directionally you are spending more to acquire a customer, then you need to know how to reverse that and change it. But yet, I don't want people to misconstrue that you say you have to just, bat away at those tactics. You actually, I know, say to people, what you really have to do before you go in and make those fine-tune measurements and changes is you need to get your strategy nailed. I know you to be someone who does the work of the positioning and the branding and the segmenting and the ideal customer profile.
Well, it's the old adage of plan the work and work the plan. And a lot of marketing, especially early stage companies, is driven by tactics and throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, because there's such an obsession with getting leads, MQLs, customers in the door, that there's a sense of desperation. Yeah. If we don't do something, if we don't do tactics, then it's not going to happen. But you have to take a step back and go, okay, so who matters to us? Where are those people? Where do they hang out? How do we engage with them? What kind of marketing do we have to do to attract them and bring them into our ecosystem? How do we differentiate ourselves from all the other companies that look and walk and talk just like us? And that comes from having a plan of attack. And if you've got that roadmap for success, then the marketing and sales that you do are going to be a lot more successful because they're going to be targeted. They're going to have the right story for the right target audience, and then you're going to have the marketing mix right. One of the biggest challenges is that marketing is like a buffet these days. There's so many things you could do, and it tends to be distracting and often tempting to do lots of different things. But the best marketing happens when you pick your lane. Like the old adage, pick your swim lane. Like pick 1 or 2 or 3 channels that you can do really well at, and it's okay. Like I sort of believe in the adage that less is more. Is that if you focus on fewer things, but you're good at them, and you can continue to optimize them and squeeze as much juice as you can from them, that's a great recipe for marketing success. When you spread yourself too thin, then all you do end up doing is mediocre marketing, and that doesn't work anymore. I mean, there's companies that are going to outflank you on every channel because you're doing okay. So have a plan, have a very focused plan, and as you gain more experience and confidence, then you can expand it slowly, right? You can add another channel, but don't feel like you have to be all places to reach all people.
That's such good encouragement that you're giving to a marketer, particularly someone who's stepping into SaaS for the first time. They're going to be surrounded by engineers. One of the things that I take comfort from is a lot of what allowed SaaS to happen was engineers who embraced guys like Eric Ries with the Lean Startup. And the whole thinking of Lean does exactly what you say. Less is more. Try to find out what is wasted and cut that out. And that will bring you into doing what is really necessary and good. It's like, let's not overcomplicate it.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. One is the importance of talking to customers. Is customers will tell you what they want to know. They'll tell you what their pains are, their aspirations, how the tools that they're using right now. That's the thing about marketing that's really interesting to me is when I do positioning exercises, for example, and I ask a CEO if I can talk to their customers, there's a reluctance. They're like, really? You want to talk to our customers? Like they try to protect them. And eventually they say yes. And so when I do talk to customers, and it can be a 20-minute conversation, customers are super happy to be talking about the product because they want to feel engaged. And B, they'll tell you things that is like, it's like gold. It's so good. It's such good insight. So if I was a new marketer joining a company, I would talk to a whole bunch of customers and find out what are their pains, what makes them happy, what makes their bosses happy, and how do they do research? Like what channels do they tap into to get the information they need? So it could be that I just spend all my time on LinkedIn, and I visit these 3 websites. So as a marketer, that, well, that's where I need to be. The other thing that I will say, just to supplement the less is more strategy, is you can focus on core channels, but doesn't mean you can't experiment. Do little micro experiments. Like, I want to figure out, for example, whether Quora is a good way for me to spend my time if I answer questions there, or maybe I should check out Reddit, because everyone talks about, the fact that it's a huge target audience. In my case, for example, I'm making some videos on TikTok these days. I mean, admittedly, some of them are not very good, but if I don't experiment and I don't understand the platform and see how it works firsthand, I'll never know whether it makes sense to actually sort of bring into my marketing mix. So stick to your core, do what that you do really well, and then dabble. Like, spend a few dollars here, maybe do it yourself. Like, do some no cost marketing there, and you'll learn, and maybe something resonates, and you can add something else to the mix. So it's a constant sort of pulling the levers, twiddling the dials, and seeing what works best for you.
Very well said. The part about experimenting makes me chuckle is I'm sure that there are some listening that get their back up at the idea of, making a TikTok video. But I think what they're probably hitting the brakes on is they're worrying that it's going to sully the brand or something. Frankly, there is such a plethora of content out there that that's not your problem, right? Like, you're already going to be very obscure. Don't think too much of yourself. We're doing a few, and nothing personal, Mark, but I'm sure your TikTok videos are okay. I haven't seen any of them yet, but that's okay, because I can't tell whether you're dabbling or not. And it doesn't, right? It gives you the information you need. And for me as a customer or potential customer, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing when it comes to marketing these days, because we used to live in a very high production world where your videos had to be professionally produced and your photographs had to be done by professional photographers with, really expensive cameras. And now everything's on an iPhone, and we're generating content that on the fly, like, we're being very agile when it comes to marketing these days. And so when it comes to consumers, they can look at a TikTok video and they can look at, well, that's fine. Like they don't really have high qualities, high expectations. I mean, some of the big brands, the Nikes of the world, well, that's going to be super slick. But for a lot of companies, we're just doing the best marketing we can, and consumers understand that, right? I mean, it can't be low quality, cheap stuff, but there are ways to be low cost, agile, innovative, creative, and do things that might resonate with your target audiences. So we shouldn't be afraid of trying things. I believe that 20% of your marketing budget should be experiments, and your CEO should give you the green light to say, yes, go ahead and do that. If they're unbelievable disasters, that's okay. As long as we're learning, as long as we don't damage the brand, it's the idea that everything is iterative, and it's all about continual improvement and learning, and that'll make our marketing better.
And this could take us to, the other side of it is, picture adventure, TV show, like a James Bond or even something sci-fi, where somebody says, our main gas tank is empty, and it's in the middle of some great chase or epic quest. Oh, that's okay. We've got the auxiliary flip. So when your main channel starts to falter, you will be so glad that you had that little experiment over on the side.
Yeah. I mean, I think, for example, that a lot of brands over the last couple of years have really leaned hard into LinkedIn as a way to attract and engage prospects. And it continues to have a lot of runway, and I think there's a lot of potential there, but there's also fatigue. A lot of people are not spending as much time at home, so they're not spending as much time on screens reading LinkedIn content. So it's good for many companies to experiment with TikTok, for example, or Reddit or Quora or Instagram, because nothing lasts forever. Every platform runs out of steam. I mean, we're seeing, for example, that Facebook, even though it's still got 2.9 billion monthly users, is losing its power as an advertising platform. And if you've leaned hard into Facebook advertising and it's not as effective, where do you go? If you're not experimenting, you're stuck, right?
Yeah, and it took you time to get good at that channel. So you better be ready to invest the time today for when another channel is going to need to take its place.
Yeah, you need a plan B, or you need to back up.
Yeah.
Because at some point in time, that horse is going to stop running as fast, and you better have a pony, in the stable that you can ride on. You already know, right?
That's right.
You've got comfortable with it. So, but that's just part of the marketing mix. And I think, one of the things that a lot of marketers, the trouble they run into is they just use the same tools year after year after year, because those are the tools that everybody uses, right? And then they don't experiment, they don't get creative, and eventually they find themselves kind of, now what do I do? And they don't know anything else, and they don't know anything better, right? So that's the problem.
You're talking to somebody who's come from the paid search environment, and we are particularly known for soaking ourselves into the uber technical world of dial twisting and knob pulling. And okay, that's fine. It took skills to do that. But if you bank too hard on those skills and you aren't ready to shift to other environments when they come along, well, you'll only be known for that skill, and the importance of what you do is dependent on the importance of that tool.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. And I think if you look at TikTok as being sort of the new shiny toy in town, 2 billion users around the world, an algorithm that is fairly democratic in terms of anybody can get engagement. The algorithm tries to surface new content all the time, new content, influencers and brands all the time. And so I think a lot of brands that are ignoring TikTok right now, and it could be any platform, but any sort of platform that has potential, are cutting off their nose to spite their face.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that if I try something new and radical and kind of edgy, that I could hurt the brand, or it may not be as effective as some of the other tools I'm using right now. And that's a mistake, because I think that, the marketing landscape changes. Your consumers, their customers, consume information in different places. So a lot of consumers who maybe leveraged LinkedIn to learn about products are now leaving the platform and going to somewhere else, and that could be TikTok. So what I'm saying is that, you've got to be learning, experimenting, testing, willing to live with failure, learning to understand that it could be a one step back, two steps forward kind of proposition, and that's what keeps your marketing engaged and successful, because you're not being complacent and being lazy, and laziness is a killer for marketing.
And I think SaaS is one of those places where if you're doing it well, you have a good chance of not getting complacent. One of the things that usually comes up in a meeting of either marketing or product people in a SaaS is cohorts, right? So cohorts can be used many ways. A product team might say, well, we brought these people on before we had function X in the product, and then we're measuring, them after they brought it in. But we're only measuring those people that were with us before, because we don't want to taint it with people that, came in first day and it was there. So this kind of borrows, it seems to me, a lot like what the medical folks do in, measuring how a drug's effectiveness works or something, right? That whole double blind, and cohorts are a really good way, I think, of just keeping it straight on how are we boxing the people that we're doing this with. And I like how product people do it. I frankly think it should be done more in marketing, where we say to people, yeah, we brought in a whole bunch of people from LinkedIn, but that was a year ago. And have we taken a look lately at which channels are driving our new people that are onboarding? Because we may want to shift our media dollars around based on how they're doing it today versus what was working for us then.
Yeah, for all the talk about marketers being obsessed with data and making a lot of decisions driven by metrics and KPIs, there is a lot of value in data, and there's a lot of intelligence and a lot of insight you can get in terms of the behavior of your customers and how the sources of traffic for your marketing activity. So you're always looking for customer intelligence. Now, it could be in the data and the spreadsheets and the dashboards, but it also could be in the real world when you're attending conferences and taking them out for dinner and doing NPS surveys, or trying to do video interviews. So there's all kinds of different ways you can interact with customers, but you're using that intelligence to sort of tweak the dials continually, because marketing's not a sort of set it and forget it kind of activity. It changes every single day. If that may be a bit dramatic, but it's constant sort of state of making small improvements. So related to your point about cohorts is the love that marketers have for buyer personas and ICPs. Buyer personas are wonderful exercises because we get to identify Mary, the accountant, and talk about, where she spends her time, how much money she makes, how many kids she has, and we get into the granular details. And those are fun to do, but we never use them. Like, we never sort of refer to Mary the marketer and go, oh, we're going to drive our marketing based on this buyer persona. And the same thing with ideal customer profiles. I mean, theoretically, they're good. But when I was talking to Rand Fishkin, the CEO of SparkToro recently, he talked about the idea of audience personas. And they're sort of, when you look at in totality of the people that you're trying to attract. So within each customer, there are influencers who I call the hunter-gatherers. Those are the people that go out, do the demos, get on the phone, they check out brochures, they watch videos, they read white papers, they try to get a sense of the product and the value it delivers. Then they report to the decision makers, who ultimately hold the purse strings and give the green light so they can make the hunter and gatherers happy, and then ultimately users within the organization. And so you have to look at them in totality, right? You have to look at them as this group, and how do we do marketing that appeals to all their needs, all their problems, so that we can be more efficient in the way that we go to market, that we're not sort of focused on tiny little slices of the customer set, but we're taking a broader approach and understanding that they all have common problems and they have common needs and common goals. So that's one way that you can make your marketing more focused and targeted without getting too targeted. Because ultimately then you got so many variations on a theme, you water things down.
Yeah. And you were talking about how we need to know that things are changing constantly. One of the things that, I want to, call out as a myth is people may still be thinking that search engines are working the way they did 10 years ago, where it was simply a matter of I, as that, persona, will type in a certain term. And then, if the marketer's done their job, that the prescriptive page, which answers, that particular question, will be first on the search results. And then I'll go in and I'll look at it. The search engines of the 2020s are now able to understand all the activities that someone has done, not just now, but stretching back into the past. It's remembered all of that. They have a persistent login. It's understood them both on their mobile device and on their desktop. It's understood what images that they've been looking at. It's understood other things that they've paid attention to on the web. So your understanding of the content that you could write for all of the situations that your person might be finding themselves in, the search engine of today is going to match them up with that content. And you just have to trust it. You can't, be patronizing to the search engine. You have to now admit that the search engine's going to find exactly what you have. And actually, instead of patronizing it, you got to trust it.
Yes, but I think search and SEO is extremely challenging, increasingly challenging for a lot of companies. One of the realities is that Google is generating a lot of searches that never generate a click. So when you do a search on Google, Google will actually present you with the information that you need without even going to the website that generates it.
That's right. So we're not aware of it.
Yeah. So you're not aware of it. Or, you have 2 or 3 companies that dominate the top 5 to 10 spots. And so everybody else doesn't get any traffic. Or Google will send people to their own properties rather than to competitive sites. So that the rules of engagement for search have changed. And I think that is driving a lot of marketers they need to think about other ways than search. So things like putting on events and webinars and leveraging other platforms that people can then find information there. So if you, for example, LinkedIn, for example, is a great way for a brand to connect with target audiences. And then they can use advertising to really super focus on the people that matter to them and direct their content and advertising to those people.
So I think your point still holds. You have to know them very deeply because, okay, you may not get them to a 250 word, blog post about how you can search their need. But if you're going to bring them onto a 45-minute webinar, you need a lot of understanding about their need to speak well to that.
Yeah. And I think what I'm saying is that the games of search have changed and that it's not this easy way for companies to drive traffic to websites and their content. It's a lot more challenging these days. And the other side of the coin is that a lot of content is clickless, is that people never go to your content. You look at a platform like LinkedIn or Pinterest or Instagram or TikTok, they don't allow links. I mean, you can embed them in the bios, but what does that do for a brand when you can't get people to go to your website? You just got to produce content that delivers information right then and there, and then builds brand affinity and brand awareness. So it's really challenging to be a marketer these days.
No doubt. You've had the chance to work at the management level, directly with C-suite. And where I want to finish is on, if we're looking at a SaaS company and the makeup of the marketing function, would you say that SaaS companies have found a groove with, our typical marketing, careers that are, plunked together in a marketing team? Or does the composition of a SaaS function marketing, does it need some differences to it? There's a lot of talk about, marketing ops, rev ops, and customer success. And, do you think that to actually resource a marketing function in SaaS is at all different from a regular marketing team?
Not sure how to answer that question. I would say that marketing teams can be structured in different ways. So if I was an early stage marketer building out my team, I would have a experienced generalist or a 5-tool player who understands strategy and tactics. And then I would leverage contractors and freelancers to make marketing happen, to be as efficient as possible. Because when you're early stage, you really don't know what kind of marketing you want to do. You don't know your customers well enough to really understand, to make a huge investment in full-time resources on a specific type of marketer with marketing skills. So I would definitely leverage the agility and the financial flexibility of freelancers and consultants. As you go forward, I think marketing becomes very much of a specialist team. So you have people who are really good at writing content, people who are good at ABM, people who are good at SEM, and that you squeeze as much expertise as you can from them, as opposed to having a team of generalists. I mean, generalists are great. I'm a generalist, for good or worse. But you really want all stars at every single full-time position, and then you fill gaps and specific needs with freelancers and contractors. And I think that at some stage in the game is really the right mix to do marketing really well, however and whenever you need to do it.
It gives you that same agility that we've talked about.
It's not a one size fits all kind of proposition. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. We'll just end with, if you want to tell folks a little bit about your own journey into working with SaaS companies. And, I know you've had a career completely outside of this field and coming to this, do you think that there are some things that you've been uniquely equipped to give you this vantage onto how a SaaS business can do its marketing?
So I started my career as a technology journalist. I worked for the Globe and Mail, Bloomberg News, the Financial Post, and I was a storyteller. But I just used newspapers to do it. And I think, I've always been aligned with the needs and the interests of target audiences. And in my case, it was readers. And so when I moved into marketing in 2008, I always think about what does the customer, what does a prospect want to read, watch, listen to? And if I can meet their needs and interests and do marketing that serves them properly and effectively, then my marketing is going to be successful. Because marketing really isn't about products or features. It really is about them, not us, the company. And I think that's been sort of it's underpinned my work as a marketer. And that's why, off the top, I talked about customers, and knowing them inside out. Because if you're not doing things that they want, that engages them and educates them, then what kind of marketing are you doing? It's just marketing for the sake of marketing, and that doesn't work.
And I think it provides the perfect counterweight to what I see in SaaS businesses. And trust me, I love them. The idea of being able to, like you said, get a couple of people together and in a week you've got a product. It's amazing. But you can get so enamored with the technology that you think the product is going to sell itself. You don't, this is why having someone who comes from the what do they want, and let's build backwards. When those two meet in the middle, it's beautiful, but you can't go too far over to the other side of saying, well, we'll dictate what they want because we know how to make stuff.
I say somewhat tongue in cheek that customers don't care about you or your technology if you're a B2B SaaS company. What they care about is themselves and their needs and the experiences that they want your product to deliver. So companies that lean into product and features and prices are singing the wrong tune, because what I care about is, how are you going to make my life better? How are you going to make me, healthier, faster, richer, more productive, right? Whatever the benefit that I'm seeking. And then in time, maybe I'll want to learn about your technology and how the platform works and whether you've got APIs that integrate into my technology stack and all that sort of nitty gritty stuff. But at the top of the funnel, I don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Just tell me what you do and tell me how you're going to serve my needs.
What a great reminder. Mark, if people want to get in touch with you, where would you send them?
Probably the easiest place is LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time writing content and engaging on LinkedIn. I'm a big believer in the platform. Just do a search for Mark Evans, and most likely you'll find me at the top of the list. My website is marketingspark.co. I also have a podcast called Marketing Spark. Just do a search on Apple Podcast. And I will be coming out with the second edition of my book, Marketing Spark. The subtitle for the second edition is Fewer Spelling and Grammar Mistakes. As a writer and a marketer, you look back at your work and you always say, oh my God, it could have been so much better if I had done a little more editing. So hopefully I spent the hours to get it right. So those are kind of the places where you can find me.
Doctors bury their mistakes, lawyers' mistakes find themselves in jail, and writers' mistakes are published for the world to see.
Unfortunately, that's true.
That's awesome. And there's so many different ways that people can approach what it is that you put out. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a great conversation.
I'm sure the listener got some excellent tidbits about this. For anybody that you know, if they're in a SaaS-based marketing role, please go ahead and share this episode with them so that they can get better insights and make their funnel even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.